Friday edition of the call up, and we've got a mailbag. It's been a while. I'm RM Layton. He's Jack McMullen. We haven't done a mailbag in a little bit, and I think the last time I did one, Jack, it was without you for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
join forces here. We're answering some questions, a lot of great ones on Twitter. We have all the questions listed below, and probably timestamped on the YouTube as well. But tried to pick a wide range of questions. There was a repetition of Moises Gomez questions, and I don't think we're going to answer either of them. Maybe in passing at the end. I just thought that was funny that Moises Gomez came up multiple times in our
Right.
replies. But a lot of good questions, Jack. We are kind of ranging all over, so I'm excited to break it down.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you invited me to this one because I'm probably just going to disagree with you for the sake of disagreeing with you on these. So, Elly De La Cruz for sure the highest floor that we've got in minor league baseball right now.
Lowest ceiling as well. So,
Yeah.
he's more of a high floor, low ceiling kind of guy, which is actually one of the questions that we're going to get to. And that's probably one of the more like layered, complex ones, but a little bit of everything. And again, a reminder, if you missed the last episode, we talked to Dax Fulton of the Miami Marlins. That was a lot of fun. Also did a live breakdown on our YouTube. Go check that out. And he really broke down the whole arsenal and all that good stuff. It was a ton of fun. That's a guy to look out for on the top 100 list potentially when we update it. I think he's got a really strong case there. And I think he's going to be on every top 100 list by midseason. There was no question there, but there were some questions in regards to guys who could enter the top 100 list and stuff like that. But Jack, let's start with the more layered question here, which I thought was one that was really tough and kind of has the most, I guess, room for nuance, because I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong answer, and I don't think there's a way that you and I are going to completely line up exactly the same on this. So the question comes from Sumi on Twitter, Sumi, not Sumi as in, come after me in litigation. But
Yeah.
I love Sumi, Sumi. Always great questions, always great interaction on Twitter. Rank these prospects' respective ceilings and floors, excuse me. Jordan Lawlar, Elly De La Cruz, Jackson Chourio, Jordan Walker, Brett Baty, Miguel Vargas. So
That's a crazy assortment. I love
that
it.
is the nuttiest assortment ever, because, and that's what I'll start with here, right? We're talking about Jackson Chourio, who's 18, and we haven't seen that much, but his profile is higher floor. And then you have like an Elly De La Cruz, who's clearly one of the high ceiling guys that we've seen in a very, very long time. But I also struggle with Elly De La Cruz's floor because he's such a freak that even if he doesn't hit enough, I feel like this guy, like even a 20 hit tool Elly De La Cruz finds a way to like be a big leaguer. So it's
Right.
really hard to conceptualize his floor. So I almost want to start with the ceilings, like separate it, and then we can try to do the floor. I think floors are way harder in the prospect world because at the end of the day, there's very few prospects that are high floor. And when they are high floor, I make that very clear. And those are guys that like I'll really, really hammer, like a Kyle Manzardo, who we're going to get to in a similar question. Like that guy, first base, safest offensive profile you're going to find. That's high floor. But a lot of other prospects in the top 100 were tantalized by the upside, and few of them are quote unquote high floor. So we'll try that in the second half of this question. But let's start with the ceilings, Jack. How do you want to do this? Do you want to go like in your order and then in my order, or how do you want to attack this? Because this is 6 names that are all ranging, all kind of over, which is the fun part.
Yeah. So I'll throw out my list and you tell me where this changes.
Okay.
Fair?
Fair.
So working from highest ceiling to lowest ceiling, and all these guys have relatively high ceilings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Elly De La Cruz and then a wide margin, right? Like everything. He's got Jordan Walker level raw power. He's faster than Jordan Lawlar. And somehow he's a more like dynamic defensive player than Lawlar as well. And he's faster than Chourio. Like every tool jumps out to make this guy the best player in baseball. And the only guys that are close are Ohtani and O'Neal Cruz. When you look at just like who the hell they are type thing. So Elly De La Cruz. After that, I mean, it's probably Chourio with how young he is and how much talent is packed in there, and like the production that came. He went from low A to high A. He sucked in double, but he got to double as an 18-year-old. So I go Elly, I go Chourio. I then go Jordan Walker because he can hit 50 homers. Like hard to doubt 50.
So and like I'll stop you right there for a second.
Yeah.
So this is where I struggle. Jackson Chourio's ceiling, his offensive ceiling is not going to sniff Jordan Walker's offensive ceiling. And maybe, not sniff is kind of harsh, but at the end of the day, Jackson Chourio, I think he's tapping out at 30 home runs, which is great, right? And I think he can hit for decent average as he continues to blossom. But I do think that there's some legitimate questions around the hit tool, and the power is obviously not close to Jordan Walker, but Walker is not a potentially Gold Glove caliber center fielder.
Right.
So that's where it's really hard for me, because it's like if Walker's a 40, 45 home run guy, but Chourio is 25 to 30 with phenomenal defense in center field, who's the better player? Who's the higher ceiling? And that's where it's really hard, because I do think Walker, I could see a path to Walker winning an MVP, I think, easier than a path to Chourio winning an MVP. And again, this is so hard. We're projecting years down the line, especially on Chourio. But like, does that resonate at all? Like that's where I struggle on comparing these guys' ceilings, because they're such different profiles.
Right. And Chourio, like we could be looking at a guy that's, 30, 25, right? 30 homers, 25 bags. Jordan Walker's not doing that. Like he might swipe how
10,
many?
15. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's not a big part of his game. So obviously when you're in the batter's box, Jordan Walker has the higher ceiling. Jordan Walker is the better player than Jackson Chourio at this point. I think he will be so moving forward. And the 100th percentile outcome is better for Walker than Chourio moving forward. Yeah. But everything else, I think, skews the way at Chourio, and that's why I say him.
Yeah, that one's so hard for me, especially because if Walker blossoms into this above-average defender and right, which I really think he can with his arm and his athleticism, I think look at how many outfield assists he already had, even though he was so shaky out there. Right. That could alter things a little bit as well. Like I think that Walker's ceiling is some semblance of Aaron Judge, or a guy that you can almost throw into center field if his reads and routes get good, and he's definitely got a long ways there, but athleticism and tools wise and work ethic, and he could get by there. And at that point, we're talking about, arguably the best player in baseball if he taps into that ceiling. So I'm going to go with Walker at 2, but I don't think you can go wrong. Like we just spent 5 minutes going back and forth on that. Right. How are you rounding out in the next 3 in terms of ceilings then? So to recap, it's Elly De La Cruz for you, Jackson Chourio, then Jordan Walker. You might as well put that 2A, 2B, but I think that's interchangeable. And then of the remaining, we have Lawlar, Baty, Vargas.
I go in that order. I go Lawlar, Baty,
I realized it as I said it. I'm like, I just gave it away. Lawlar, Baty, Vargas is what you're thinking?
Yeah, because Lawlar speed and defense is something that Baty has a teensy bit of, Vargas has a teensy bit of, but Lawlar, like he is lead baseball in stolen bases type fast, and he's Gold Glove shortstop type good. Yeah. He impacts the ball a little bit less than Baty. I think Miguel Vargas, if we were to go highest floor, like Vargas, I think far and away has the highest floor here.
Yep.
And we can do that after the fact, but I think his floor and ceiling are very close, where I think he is a super utility guy, and that's what he is. Lawlar is perennial all-star shortstop at his best.
100%. And I was a little bit surprised at Lawlar's exit velos, especially like this is where it's really nice to have, access to some more information here, because you see Lawlar hit, 18 home runs and you're like, oh, wow, power output's right on par with Marcelo Meyer, but you got to remember where he's playing and the environments that he's playing and how much the ball, just takes off there. That said, you still got to drive it in the air, and he is a great gap-to-gap line drive guy that's producing what I would say right now is right on par with average exit velocities. But that was as a 19/20-year-old. So if he taps into a little bit more power, he's going to still be a guy that I think can hit 20 home runs. That on top of elite speed, the defense that you mentioned, and just how dynamic he is, Lawlar is a really exciting player. And I think just brings a little bit more to the table, like you said. Baty hits the ball so damn hard. And I think just is a little bit more of an impactful bat than Vargas. And I think that Baty is close enough in terms of bat to ball. Vargas is the best of this whole bunch in that regard, but Baty is not as far off as A lot of people might think in that regard, and he got better and better as the year went on, had success in Double A. I think really, even in a brief cameo, showed the poise and in the comfort at the big league level, even though the numbers kind of similar to Casas, so like weren't off the charts, but you could really see that he looked like he belonged as a prospect. And it's very cut and dry with that, right? Like when Francisco Alvarez was up there, you could tell that he wasn't quite ready.
He wasn't ready. Yeah.
And that's not a knock on him. So I would say Baty's floor is up there too. But in terms of staying on the ceilings, Baty hits the ball so damn hard. I think he can be a 30, 35 home run guy, especially now with his ability to lift the ball. He's improved so much defensively at third. I think he can get by in a corner outfit. So it gives you a little bit of the versatility. Vargas, obviously the most versatile here as well. So I would go my list very similar to you here. I would just flip flop Walker and Chourio. So I'd go Elly De La Cruz. Then I would go Walker. Then I would go Chourio. Then it's Lawlar, Baty, Vargas for me. And the good news for, Dodger fans and Vargas fans is we go back around the other way in terms of highest floor. Vargas is leading the way, right? I mean, this guy,
and it's not close.
I don't think it's particularly close. You could maybe make the case that Brett Baty's floor is high if you really are buying what Brett Baty was selling last year, which was a much lower ground ball rate, higher exit velocities, just better all-around baseball player. But Miguel Vargas, like, this guy is just hit at every single stop. And yeah, you could say, oh, he kind of struggled in the big leagues last year, but I don't really care. He saw sporadic playing time. He was trying to carve out a role on the best team in baseball. Like, this guy was trying to prove that he belonged on an 111 win team, seeing sporadic playing time in 18 games. I don't really care about that. This guy has barely struck out his entire professional career. 14.6% K rate in AAA last year. The year before that, he struck out around 16% of the time between high A and double A. He upped his walk rate to the highest of his career at 14% and hit the most home runs at one level. And I think if you combined high A and double A, that was the highest home run output in 2021, but he had 17 home runs in AAA last year as well. His swing is so smooth. His approach is so good. He can play all over the infield. There's few guys that are quote unquote still prospects that I feel more confident about to just be at least like an everyday big leaguer. And I think Miguel Vargas is exactly that.
It's like, I think a lot of people got their first taste of Miguel Vargas at spring training last year when he hit a bomb to left and it looked a lot like Alex Rodriguez's swing. A lot like A-Rod's swing. So, I mean,
really smooth.
We're not saying he's A-Rod. Honestly, I think in terms of just the numbers that he could be putting up, he feels like Carlos Santana with defensive versatility as the floor, right? Walk nearly as much as you strike out, impact the ball enough, and he can play a solid, defense at third, at second, at first, hell, at short if you need him in left and right.
And I think he can develop into more power. Like, he's 6'3", 195. He's got some room still to fill out a little bit more. I don't know if the Dodgers want him to. They might want him to still be kind of that average to above average runner. But when your zone contact's around 83, 84%, when your exit velocities are in 90th percentile exit velocity, just a hair under 103 miles an hour, which is, a notch above average. And then you've got the approach. He doesn't chase rate below 20%. Like, it's just so easy. That's a guy that, again, one of the highest floors offensively in baseball in the minor leagues. So that's a no-brainer for me. Next highest floor is where it gets interesting. I would say, you can make the case for Brett Baty. You can make the case for Jordan Walker, given that he is hit at every single freaking stop and has just the power that even if the hit tool is closer to average than above average, he's still going to hit enough home runs to be a productive player, and he's not a clog, which is interesting. So this is where it's a little bit harder. Baty, upper minor success as well, and then the cameo in the big leagues. And then we talked about Jordan Lawlar, but I think with limited success at the upper levels compared to some of the other guys, I'd have to, dig Jordan Lawlar's numbers back up. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he's played nearly as much in double A as some of these other guys. So,
and he's a mid to high 20s K rate guy. He strikes out more than Baty does. He strikes out more than Walker
Chase rates are higher. Yeah, he only played 20 games in double A and struggled there. So, I would say, who would you put for second highest floor?
I'm gonna go 1 through 6 right now, and you tell me where you disagree.
Okay.
I go Vargas, Baty, because I think he already plays a good defensive third and
And
he's more comfortable
he
in
hits the
left.
ball too hard, man. Like I think he's in
Yeah.
terms of 90th percentile exit velocity, I think he would be closer to Jordan Walker than people think and third on this list. So he just consistently hits the ball hard. That's going to help his floor.
Right. So I go Vargas, Baty, Walker, Lawlar, Elly, Chourio.
I'm pretty sure I will completely agree with that list.
The
Yeah, I
only
don't.
reason Chourio's the lowest and like we've said Gold Glove caliber center fielder, he's freaking 18 years old, man. Like
Yeah,
we don't
like
know shit about him.
we just saw Elly De La Cruz have success in Double A, not just success, massive success with
Yeah.
zero approach, a right-handed swing that's lagging behind his left-handed swing, and swing and miss issues, and he still showed us that he can be not only productive, one of the most productive hitters in the minor leagues. So I think that almost helps the floor, even though he just like plays a little haphazardly. Obviously, better pitchers can expose that a bit more, but that would get exposed in Double A if it was like a really, really bad issue. So, I think for him, he's just going to find a way. Like I said, he could be a 20, 30 hit tool guy. And the other tools, the game power already, everything that he does on the field will already allow him to be a productive baseball player. So I agree with that. I think that's basically my exact order. It would be Vargas, Baty, Walker, Lawlar, then De La Cruz and Chourio. That's how I'd go with it. So
Identical.
fun question there. Thank you for that, Sumi. And we will move to probably some shorter questions, but I wanted to get the longer one out of the way. We'll stick on the ceiling floor kind of conversation. This is more of just a ceiling question. I thought this was a great one from Caleb with a K team-TB on Twitter. Who has the higher ceiling as a hitter, Curtis Mead or Kyle Manzardo? And I honestly think there's a clear answer to this, but I don't know if the whole prospect community necessarily knows that. Like, I think Curtis Mead is, because if you look at the Fangraphs numbers, you can make the case, oh, well, Manzardo hits for a ton of average. The power's there, 22 home runs last year in, 93 games. He walks as much as he strikes out. All of those things are great news. And I think he has a really high, I think Manzardo is, again, one of the safest offensive profiles in the minor leagues, right there with Miguel Vargas, arguably, I think probably safer. The thing is, Curtis Mead, I don't think people realize how much power Curtis Mead has. And that's the one thing I want to emphasize here. And Mead also hit for average, got on base, like does a lot of good things. And while Mead may not be the best defender in the world, he can get by at third. He can play first. He can play, multiple spots. But what's interesting is Mead actually hit less home runs last year. He played less games, played 76 games, a little banged up. He hit 13 home runs, whereas we had some more home runs from Manzardo. But Mead's ceiling is 30 plus home runs, hitting for average and not striking out. I think Manzardo is more 20 to 25, hitting for average and not striking out. What do you think about that?
So I just referenced that you had him 2 and 3 in the Rays org on your write-up at justbaseball.com. 90th percentile exit velo, which I know is a number that you love. It shows you what they do consistently. 90th percentile exit velo for Curtis Mead of 107 miles an hour.
Yep.
That's shitting on the baseball.
That's crazy stuff.
Like Manzardo, while he did have 22 pumps this year, he's not 107 90th percentile exit velo. And that means, like, think 90th percentile exit velo. Obviously, max exit velo is going to be you have an out-of-body experience and you hit a ball this hard. That's where you see the 119s, the 120s come from. It takes into account all the bad swings you put on balls and all the 65 mile an hour dinks and dunks that you've put into play.
Yeah.
How hard are you hitting the ball consistently? Like, what does you getting all of a ball look like once a night, once every 2 nights? And for Mead, it's 107 miles an hour.
Yeah. And that's going to translate better. You look at hard hit rate. Manzardo was in the low 50s. Mead was at 60%. And like, it's just unheard of. Like, that's just ridiculous. When I look at him Manzardo, though, and his zone contact's like upper 80%. He doesn't chase, neither does Mead. Swinging strike rate very low. But yeah, I mean, 90th percentile exit velocity is really, I love looking at it because Noel V. Marte is like the best case study of this, right? This guy has the raw power to put up 114 mile per hour exit velocities, which is like some of the best in the minor leagues. But he also very infrequently gets off those kinds of exit velocities because he gets out of his A swing. He takes a lot of half-hearted, fooled swings, ass out, one hand, whatever, or rolls over. So like, what good is your power if you're not frequently getting into it? And that's why I love 90th percentile exit velocity. It still also shows what you're capable of as well and factors in those max exit velocities. But how often are you getting to that max? Manzardo, like that power is going to tick down. That game power is going to tick down, I think, in the big leagues, and he'll be a 20 home run guy. But he's going to get on base a ton. He's going to hit for average, and he's going to be really good. But Mead's got the kind of foul pole to foul pole power that, again, I think he could be 30 plus. And I think people also don't realize this guy's also 22 years old. Manzardo's 22. They're both like 3 months apart. But Mead has just been doing this now for consecutive years. And I think is still scraping the surface of the kind of power he can tap into. So I'm looking for Mead to have things click and hit 30. Like, I really think he can hit 30 at the highest level. And that's why I have him at the highest ceiling. I'm glad you brought up the 90th percentile because that's where they're about 4 miles per hour apart, maybe a little bit more than that. So
it's
that's
serious.
a lot. That's a lot. That doesn't mean that Manzardo couldn't end up getting into his game power more frequently because he lifts the ball and taps into it easier in games and just has a better approach. Like, that could happen. But when we're talking about ceilings, I'm going to go a little bit more data heavy, generally speaking, because you kind of have to when they both have success at the upper levels of the minor leagues and both have hit home runs. If you go straight numbers, anybody can answer that question,
So, quick exercise. I don't know if it's easily accessible for you, but could you do like a major league leaderboard this past year of 90th percentile exit velos?
I wish I could do. Okay. I could do like just the Tampa Bay Rays for reference. And if you look at the Tampa Bay Rays organization, and I do need to do like a full big league queue. Like, I need to queue up all of the 90th percentile exit velocities for the big leagues. I think it's still very telling on the big league side of things too.
Yeah, because like the way that I'm looking at it right now is I've got max exit velocity on Savant right now, and I'm looking at the guys in the top 20 in max exit velo, like the guys that have put up a batted ball of 115 miles an hour with an average exit velo under 90 miles an hour. And that's where you see the separators. Like up top, Stanton, Ohtani, Judge, Vladdy, Yordan, Julio, like it all makes sense, right? The guys that are in the top 12 or in the top 20 of max exit velo with an average exit velocity under 90 miles an hour, Luis Robert, Avisayo Garcia, Pete Alonso, which is crazy. I don't know how that guy has a max exit velo under 90 or an average exit velo. Average exit velo. CJ Crone. And then I think there was another. William Contreras. No, not William Contreras. But yeah, man, I mean, like, those are the outliers in that leaderboard. So I'm curious who the guys at the top are, because if you do queue that, it probably looks like Judge, Stanton, Yordan, and that's that.
Without a doubt. In my mind. And then like there's a lot of guys 90th percentile that like if they strike out too much, like obviously they're gonna sneak through here. But if you're looking at the Rays org, guess which big leaguer had the highest 90th percentile? It's not a big power guy. Can you take a guess?
I don't know.
Yandy Diaz.
I would have never guessed Yandy Diaz.
108 because he consistently hits the ball hard. Just consistently hit the ball hard. And I think Curtis Mead could be very similar to Yandy Diaz with I think more game power. For reference, though, the only guys in the organization with a higher 90th percentile exit velocity than Curtis Mead were, and this is including the big leagues, Yandy Diaz and Nico Holsizer, and also Christian Betancourt. But that was a smaller sample size, and obviously a guy that doesn't walk at all. And when he makes contact, he hits it really hard, but that's about it. So those are the only 3 guys that are above Curtis Mead. And that's
interesting,
which is pretty wild.
Cool.
So we'll move on to the next question, which It kind of ties back to the Reds conversation we had recently. So I think this could be an easier one to answer, still kind of fresh in our minds. This comes from Bryce Spalding. Of course, for those who are Reds fans that somehow know about us and not the Reds, which I don't think is possible, or not like Reds, the Reds community, because there's a lot of people that cover, I think, the Reds minor leagues pretty well, but I think there's a few that do it really well. Bryce Spalding is one of them. If you somehow know about us and not him and know about the Reds, or like to learn about the Reds, definitely go check out Bryce Spalding and the stuff that he does on Twitter to keep you briefed on the Red system for those Reds fans that may be listening. But you probably already know about him if you're a Reds fan. His question was, if you had the guess of which Reds prospects move positions besides Marte, because obviously I think the writing's on the wall there, who do you think could transition best to corner outfield or even center field? And we'll take this from the pool of top 10 prospects that we discussed in the Reds system. Yes. So that would be like a Elly De La Cruz, that would be a Matt McLain, that would be we're excluding Noelvi Marte. Who else would that include off the top of my head of like guys that could potentially move? Edwin Arroyo, I guess technically, but I wouldn't move that guy.
Do you consider Steer as a guy that could that moves?
His job is to move.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say Steer.
Clear cut answer for me.
Yeah, I agree. Even if we're like missing a couple of guys, there's still one number one answer for me of the guy that can move and I think accommodate the move the best. What's your answer? And I have a good feeling it's going to be the same one for me.
I think McLain is the center fielder for the Reds.
Correct. Yeah, I'm with you. Little bit of an experience doing that at UCLA, and then on the Cape, it was funny, man. Like he was a pain in the ass for like my scorebook, because he would
just move everywhere. I'm sure
everywhere, and honestly, like he doesn't look supernatural anywhere, but also looks comfortable everywhere. Like if that makes sense. Like he doesn't have like the true shortstop actions, but gets to every ball and makes a strong throw. And I think grades out as an everyday, at least an average defender at shortstop. I think he's slightly above with the tools that he has. At third base, like it's not the traditional like arm angle and the things that like the kind of throw on the run that you see from third baseman, but like he still makes all the plays that you need to see him make. In the outfield, I don't know what it is. He didn't look like your classic outfielder, but you see the plus speed, you see the instincts, and he runs down baseballs, and then he's got a good arm. I think this guy could be a good center fielder. I think he could be a great left fielder if you wanted to put him there. I think it's kind of a waste of his speed out there. I think you either keep him as short or you put him in center. That's what I would do. I think it's a waste of his athleticism and his talent. Again, if you're in a pinch and you got studs at, Elly De La Cruz is at his 90th percentile outcome and that guy's playing short, sure. And then Steer is holding down third, because I also don't love McLain at third. Again, I want to use that athleticism. Maybe you can put him at second and he's an elite defender there. But I would love to see Matt McLain in center field. I think it's the greatest utilization of his speed. I think he will roam well in Cincinnati with the smaller outfield out there, even though I already think he could cover a cavernous outfield with his speed and as his reads get better. But this is a guy that I want to see get some more reps out there, because I want to break down the tape. Like I want to see this guy in center field because I think he could be great out there.
Yeah, I think so too. And he's so gifted. Like, you think high floor college bat, you probably lack some tools. He's just a really good athlete, man. Like you get those guys. He is probably a smoother athlete than Garrett Mitchell. And Garrett Mitchell, classic UCLA center fielder, really smooth athlete. I think that McLain, it's almost seamless the way that he can move to center. And honestly, I feel better about McLain in center because you can let Ellie's arm eat at short if it works out. If not, Edwin Arroyo is a guy that can continue to develop at shortstop.
Yeah. And that's not a guy I want to move. I got some questions about that. Like, I think, and he's a little bit raw, but defensive tools wise, Arroyo, man, that was a fun tape breakdown. Just seeing the way that he moves, seeing the arm. He's a little guy, but the arm really plays. his like internal clock and his instincts get a little bit better, but the hands are silky smooth. That's a guy that just looks like a natural shortstop, right? He whips it from down here on the run, back a backhand. You're like, why is he taking so long? Like he's not the guy's going to beat it out, and then he uncorks a 95-mile-an-hour ball that gets a guy by a half step, and you're like, oh, okay, he's got that confidence. There was a couple times where he took a little too long, and his internal clock wasn't totally right, and the guy was safe, or like a flip to second base, and the guy slid in there in time. Like those are all things that I'm not worried about with a 19-year-old. The things that he you can't really teach that well, he's got those. So I would not move a guy. And also he doesn't have the offensive upside of some of these other guys. I don't think, maybe it's almost where McLean is, but I think McLean's got more juice. And I think McLean's a little bit more of a dynamic hitter. But for that reason too, like you're going to get a lot of Arroyo's value from the glove. I'd rather keep that guy as like kind of that alternate middle infielder. He's also way behind these other guys we're talking about. The other one that I still see questions on is like Jose Barrero. And I just want to say one thing about Jose Barrero. He could turn into an all right baseball player. He could turn into a good baseball player. I think if you run 100 simulations, most of them have him getting DFA'd eventually. That's honestly just what I think. I'm not worried about his defensive home until he can hit. Like I think you're wasting your bandwidth in your brain right now, trying to find a defensive home for a guy that might not hit enough to have a defensive home, if that makes sense. Like, am I being too harsh? Like I see a lot of questions on Barrero, and I'm like, let's cross that bridge when he hits. Otherwise, what are we really talking about? And I get Reds fans kind of just assuming he's going to hit, hoping he's going to hit, and trying to think about something else. But at the same time, like if he's not hitting, we don't need to find a defensive home for him. The whole point is you hit, they find a spot for you. McLean hits. If Elly De La Cruz has a shortstop walk down, they're going to find a spot for him somewhere else. Spencer Steer's a perfect example of that. If he hits, he's not going to be your everyday third baseman probably. He's not going to be your everyday anything. They're going to move him around and keep him in the damn lineup because he keeps hitting. Barrero, they're not going to say, oh, well, we found a place where he is phenomenal defensively, so let's ignore the 180 batting average. Like, I think we got to cross that bridge when we get there. What's your thoughts on Barrero? Did you see him at all in Triple?
I did, yeah, and it was a frustrating watch. And might I say, if Jose Barrero was in any other organization, we would not be talking about Barrero as much as we do now, because and that's a testament to Reds fans in a positive way. Reds fans, man. If we've got like 3 fan bases on lock right now when it comes to prospects, and like I love interacting with these 3 fan bases, it's Cincinnati, the Cubs, and the Marlins. Yeah, those are the 3 that I have somehow become engulfed in Reds Twitter, in Cubs Twitter, and in Marlins Twitter, and I'm so happy about it. Like I love it, and all my follows are Pirates, White Sox, Padres. Like these are the organizations that I've been around, Nationals. But thank you, Reds fans, for adopting us and coming to us, asking us questions about Jose Barrero. I remember last year, the one mailbag that I was on with you, I think it was a prospect mailbag on the Just Baseball show. We answered a Dowry Moretta question. Like what?
Dude, but Reds fans and Cubs fans are 2 of the fan bases that have asked me about a prospect I've never heard of. And I don't want to like toot my own horn, but I would say like I spend a lot of time on this.
It's hard to sneak a prospect by.
It's hard to ask me about a guy I don't at least know his name and one thing I can say about him. Like both fan bases have stumped me a couple times on a live stream where I'm like, brother, the last thing I'm going to do is bullshit you.
Talk out my ass. Yeah.
I will refuse to talk out of my ass. I'd rather tell you I don't know who that is. But the last thing I'll say is I do think Reds and Cubs specifically, some of the most knowledgeable fans, there is. And I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, but a big reason why I'm so into prospects is I grew up a Marlins fan, and they traded all of my favorite players, right? And like I was trying to cope with Miguel Cabrera getting dealt, and like I studied who the hell these 2 prospects were that the 2 centerpieces were that came in the deal. Who is Andrew Miller? Who is Cameron Maben? And then when they didn't quite work out, why didn't they work out? So that's kind of what got me more into the prospect side of things. And then also you saw, Michael traded for Anibal Sanchez and Hanley Ramirez coming over and seeing those guys succeed as prospects. And like, okay, well, why did these guys succeed? It just became a whole thing that just kind of opened up this can of worms for me. And I fell in love with the prospect world. And guess what? The Marlins ran that cycle 4 more times in my fandom until I basically just got numb to it. And it allowed me to really turn into a prospect guy. So I can understand why some of these other, Reds fans, Cubs fans, I know they won in 16, but some of these other fan bases latch onto the prospect side of things because it's the only thing that can keep you sane as a fan.
No, and it makes bad baseball at the major league level palatable because
yes.
you
something to look forward to.
Right. You allot your energy to what's coming. And the beauty of having 4 teams under the one team is you can take the positives from all 4 and put together a day's worth of happiness on the prospect front. My quick thing on Barrero, it's the Christian Pache conversation. Obviously, he's got promise. Like, obviously, we know what he can do because he's still getting opportunities. Pache is not going to get DFA'd. Barrero, eventually he will. Pache, I think eventually he will. But as of right now, they're not because we know what they can do. Pache is a platinum glove level defender in center field. Barrero, if he runs into balls consistently, can hit 8 homers in 10 games. But Barrero has gotten up and he's hit $170 in 3 auditions. So we can't bank on Barrero anymore. Elly De La Cruz is better than Barrero. Steer is better than Barrero. Hell, Edwin Arroyo in a year or 2 is going to be a better option than Barrero. So that's the problem with prospects. When they don't work out, you got to jump ship quick because there's always somebody coming, and the baseline talent level in baseball, major league level, minor league level, it's never been higher.
Yep.
So if your favorite prospect from 2019 is stinking it up in 2022, guess what? They might have lost their job.
Yep. No, 100%. And the last thing I'll kind of say on this is because this was another question that it was unrelated to the Reds specifically, but it ties in, so we can like kind of do a 2-for-1 here. Basically, it was like, what do teams do when you have a prospect that is big league ready and his position is kind of accounted for, right? Like, do you move off of that player, or like do you get rid of the guy at the big league level? Like, what do? Do you shuffle things around, whatever? It ties into this Reds question because I'm a firm believer of you cross that bridge when you get there, man. Like, there's a reason why McLean was still getting a ton of shortstop reps while Elly De La Cruz somehow still got a ton of shortstop reps. You can't assume that anyone is going to succeed. Even Elly De La Cruz, even the number 1 or number 2 prospect in baseball. Look at what the Orioles, have been doing. Like, even with a Gunnar Anderson, like, that's a guy that's going to play a lot of third. You can't make major league decisions on the assumption of a prospect displacing a big leaguer, because to your point, even the average big leaguers, most of those guys were elite prospects, man. Some of them were Ty Francis that overachieved and whatever, but a lot of these guys were top prospects. And I'm spending a lot of time on the back half of the top 100 trying to figure out who's going to be an average regular, slightly above average regular, in the most likely outcomes. So, that's the one thing I always want to say too, is we often get excited. We get ahead of ourselves, and we got to remember the odds are stacked against all of these guys. And you should never if you make a big league decision based on what's happening in the minor leagues, you're going to set yourself up for some failure. I mean, look at the Marlins rotation. I think the smartest thing they could do is not account for Yuri Perez coming up and anchoring a spot, even though I think he will. And I think the Marlins think he will. You can't set yourself up for that because you never know what's going to happen.
That's why Cueto on a 1-year deal was so good.
That's why I love it. I love it. And if he's shoving and you figure it out, I don't know. You cross that bridge when you get there.
By the way, like circling all the way back to McLean, you said he was a nuisance for your scorebook. Something that we can like do over the years, and I'm only 4 or 5 years in, but I keep all my scorebooks. I use Bob Carpenter's baseball.
I have my thick scorebook from the Cape.
Yeah, I literally just ordered another after you said that. I was like, oh, damn, I need my scorebook for this year. So I just ordered my scorebook from Bob Carpenter. It is the best scorebook ever. But a fun thing that we could do is like just go back to 2018 on the Cape, 2019 short season. It's like, hey, what did Riley Green do today? So I'll bust out the old books and look at those.
I'm in on that. It'd be a fun way to start opening up some of these podcasts. It's just like a random dog day, summer day. Holy crap, I saw 8 big leaguers play against each other in 2020.
And I probably have a Snapchat memory in Auburn, New York of me like wearing a hoodie and the headset is over the hoodie and I'm wearing sunglasses while it's raining. So I can cross the days.
There we go. No, and the Cape too. I'm excited. Like I've got some games of Torque against, gosh, I can't even imagine some of the other guys that I saw out there that
Yeah.
would have been really cool to
I've
go
got a
back.
quality start from Manoa in my book from
Yeah,
2018.
that's sick, dude. That's absolutely sick.
Yeah.
All right, we got this question was hard, and I think there's a myriad of answers to this. But I think you had some time to think about it too, because it's hard if you're put on the spot, honestly. But I think this is a great question. This is from Ant Fuz. It's Antfuuuz.
I
And the
said
question,
fuzz when he asked a question on the Just Baseball show.
yeah, but I think it's Fuz because it's more U's than Z, more
Yeah.
U than Z.
Reply to us, Aunt Fuzz.
Fuzz. What prospect are you most confident in being a top 50 prospect by end of season that isn't on any major top 100 list at the moment? So I'm going to say isn't on most lists. I can't account for every list. Like you've got, Keith Law's list, which is going to be very unique in a lot of ways of having names that some others don't have. And then you're going to have like Baseball Prospectus, which is also always very unique and having maybe some one name that nobody else has too. So I'm going to base it on basically the one that I've seen on lists. Maybe one of these guys may have appeared on one list, so I'm sorry. But this is hard because I like to think that I account for those guys in the back half of the top 100. If I think you can be a top 50 prospect by midseason, you're probably going to be
Yeah.
on the back half of my top 100 list. So it would have to mean that you have extreme risk and you hedge that risk, or you overcome that risk with a first half performance that makes us say, okay, he's here. And there's two guys that I think can do that off the top of my head. And I'm sure there's a million more. And one is because I'm literally doing the Yankee system right now. And then another is because I fell in love with him even in limited video. And I can't quite rank him in the top 100 just yet. He might crack it. I think both of these guys might crack it. But they might be only on our list and nobody else's, or maybe on one other list. So the first name is a guy that you probably remember us talking about in the Texas Rangers organization when we were breaking this down. And a guy that I think we said when we were doing the episode, I was not expecting to have this guy this high, Brock Porter. You don't see high school guys that are 6'4". You always use the term bully ball, Jack. He's 6'4", 210 with just an electric fastball and a pretty unique arm angle that I think gave him some detractors because people were like, oh, I don't know if he can time that arm up or whatever, but he throws strikes. And every time I've seen, small outings, but every time I've watched, he's thrown strikes. It's a mid to upper 90s fastball and a plus changeup already, or a changeup that easily flashes plus. How often do you see that from high school power pitchers? So if the changeup's already flashing plus, the fastball is mid 90s with life. You're telling me that this power pitcher can't develop this? And for those just listening, I did the curveball or slider gesture. Like, you're telling me he can't develop some spin in this Rapsodo generation? Like, with his arm speed, with his talent, this guy will learn how to throw at least an above average breaking ball. So with a nasty changeup, a fastball that can overpower you, and even an average curveball, he's going to eat low A hitters alive. And I think if he does that right out of the gate and then goes to high A and eats those guys alive too, which I think he can with the changeup, he could just jump right into top 50 prospect conversation. He was one of the best prep arms in the draft last year. That's my first answer. And what do you think about that?
I like it. I like it. I like that you chose a high school righty because I've got two college arms that like went this past year that jump out to me that are not getting, top 100 prospect intrigue that I think are going to get their first taste of minor league baseball at the lower levels and just dominate. But I'll save that if you've got another guy that you feel like is at the lower levels and just roll.
Okay. This is one that I don't know if you saw me ask this question in the group chat. I asked it specifically to our guy, Pete Flaherty, who is, with Baseball America now as a draft guy and has been doing draft stuff forever, and saw this guy on the Cape and said, I don't know why I didn't like him more either. Spencer Jones, dude, it might not happen. He's 6'7". There's not a lot of precedent for like the big athletic hitters, but we saw James Wood. He's a lot closer to James Wood than I think a lot of people want to believe. I think that we saw him drafted later because there wasn't as much of the track record of hitting. He was a two-way guy when he first got to Vandy. His swing, when I watched him in the College World Series, was way behind what it is now. This guy put up 110 plus mile per hour exit velocities with metal at Vanderbilt and really improved the swing. His swing as a big dude, starts with his hands really far back, loads into his backside. It's Ohtani-esque the way he moves. And you got to be a freak to move that way. But remember, Spencer Jones is a two-way player. He's playing center field and he can run. Like he can run. So he's a freak athlete too. I'm not saying he's Ohtani, but he's a freak athlete. He's already hitting the ball really hard. He showed well in a small stint in low A. The video that I was able to get access to looked open side, looked at the way his body moves. It is phenomenal the way he controls his 6'7" body. Power's off the charts. He can play center field. He's got speed. I could see this guy getting off to a hot start with the Yankee pump too. The way Yankees prospects always, they're never going to be underrated when they perform.
Right. No.
I wouldn't blink if Spencer Jones is a top 50 prospect by midseason. And it wouldn't just be because of the Yankees pump. It's a center fielder who's 6'7" with juice. He could be the next James Wood, who, by the way, remember, was a second-round pick that a lot of people were like, we'll see. And we saw. And it was just lower levels than we saw. I think we could see the same thing from Spencer Jones.
Yeah, I think on draft night, a lot of Yankee Twitter blew up because it was like, hey, this guy looks like Judge. Like he's a big, strong man that hits ball far. It's like, okay, well, you can never assume that a guy is going to be 40% of Aaron Judge because Aaron Judge has already put together a somewhat decent Hall of Fame case, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. But like, that's kind of what you dream on with Spencer Jones, where it's a very simple swing and he's got loads of power and he's carved like a Grecian god. So yeah, I mean, that is like the Spencer Jones mold. I do really like that.
So those are my two. You know, I think Brock Porter, that's one that I think he might be on the top 100 list. I think Spencer Jones can be on our top 100 list, but I think that's still because of me believing that they're going to be top 50 guys. So I hope that's not a cop out, but that's where I stand on that.
So one guy I'm buying production in college in the second best conference in America. The other guy, I'm buying the Mitch Keller tread bullpen video type thing.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. But I'll start with the guy that I believe in the production is Cooper Jerpy, who went 22nd to St. Louis. I think in that Cardinals organization, Jerpy is not a big, strong guy. He's 6'3", but what he does from the left side is like Chris Sale type arm slot, like low 3/4, everything sweeps. The fastball's good enough. It's like 92 to 94. And it comes from such an unorthodox angle. Like this guy obliterated the Pac-12 last year. 103 innings, punched out 161, walked 23. That's 14 Ks per nine. That's 2 walks per nine. He had a 2.5 ERA. College ERAs, unless you're Leiter or Kumar, are typically higher than you see at the lower levels of the minor leagues. I think that this guy could be like 2 ERA in high A and then get the bump to double in June.
It's one of those guys that I love that you went total opposite of like the type of profile I went, because there's two ways that you can ascend prospect rankings very quickly. One being the high school guy that again eliminates a lot of the concern that we had. And we're like, oh, he's doing it already. Or two, being the college guy where you're like, of the top 100 prospect lists, this guy looks like one of the safest bets we're going to find. He's going to fly right up to the big leagues.
It's McLean. It's the McLean factor.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, if Jerpy does that as a left-handed pitcher, absolutely. You got another one?
Yeah. Peyton Pallette in the White Sox organization.
Ooh,
that's the video that I'm buying.
You're buying that vid?
I'm buying the vid because it's 99 with ride, and then it's this low 80s hammer. Like, it's insane, dude. It's like, it's not 12-6, but it's a true curveball, and he's high 90s. I'll buy that. He's a TJ guy. He missed all of last year, and the White Sox grabbed him early in the 2022 draft, but he wasn't like, you know, top 20 pick. And Pallette, like just seeing that video, I don't know how it surfaced on Twitter, but seeing that video of Pallette, I was like, okay, this guy might be legit.
I'm in. I'm excited to see more from him. Honestly, like looks have been limited, but I think the stuff is crazy. I loved that pick. And it should be pretty fun. I mean, I would be more shocked with Pallette than Jerpy. I'll tell you that. But if we're buying the tread video, if he comes out and shoves,
I'm buying the tread video.
All right. I'm in.
Just like I'm buying the Painter Cressy videos right now.
Oh, I'll buy Painter. It doesn't even matter. I'll buy whatever Painter is selling.
So you're fully buying the Painter Cressy videos.
I'm buying Painter anything. It could be It could be you making a video of him playing catch with his mom. I'm buying it. So it's different. Yeah. But Also, that would be really dangerous for him to play catch with anybody other than an experienced catcher with how much life
Correct.
he has on his fastball.
Correct.
But all right, last question, then we'll call it a weekend here. This is a good one, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we could probably spend 30 minutes on this one alone. But we'll try to just kind of fly through this. This comes from Katie Claiborne. Do you see a lot of top 100 guys making their club out of spring training like last year with J-Rod, Witt, Torque, etc.? There was about 7 or 8, I think that made it, I think is what the question was. But like, do we see more people doing that this year, or do we see a similar number this year potentially doing that? So does that exclude, I guess I'll ask you as if you asked the question, Jack, and your interpretation of this, does that exclude guys that already debuted? I would say yes, right? Because that's
I think so.
That's kind of a no-brainer, right? Because obviously they're probably going to make it out of camp, Ben.
Right.
I would say, and fill in for me. I'm just going to kind of fly through our previous top 100 list. This is not the updated, but I'll fly through our previous top 100 list, and I'll kind of say yes, no, maybe. And for the maybes, you can kind of push one way or another. Grayson Rodriguez, I say yes.
Yes.
It would be malpractice if he's not. Like, that's easily your best starter from the jump. Elly De La Cruz, no. Jordan Walker, no.
So maybe. I know Xavier Scruggs is buying into that, and he thinks like if Jordan Walker just lights the world on fire during spring training, he could carve out a role for himself. I think that lineup is already too crowded.
It's too good. It's like, why rush him? Like, let him get better in the outfield in AAA for 30 games, 40 games. You also gain the year of control, which I'm not going to promote service time manipulation, but just from the perspective of like, this is a very justifiable, he needs to improve. This isn't Chris Bryant, he needs to improve the defense. This is like a justifiable, he needs to improve the defense.
It's O'Neill Cruz, he needs to improve.
Give him more at bats. Like, it's fine. I'm going to say that's a maybe, but I would say it's 70-30 no on Jordan Walker. Moreno's already debuted, so we'll see him. Yuri Perez, no. He needs some more innings, needs to build up, and I think he kind of limped to the finish line physically a little bit last year.
Let's get him in AAA. Yeah.
Get him in AAA, tighter strike zone, have some success there. Andy Painter is a maybe, but I'm going to say no because there's just no reason to rush, I think, right? But I also I'm not a proponent of wasting bullets on pitchers in the minor leagues, but I think Painter could use a few more innings and they kind of filled out the rotation to a degree. I don't know if they desperately need him. Where do you stand on Painter?
I actually stand on maybe with Painter. If he dominates big league camp, why wait?
Yeah.
You've got
if he absolutely like shoves it up their ass, like the big leaguers in spring training. Yeah. I mean, you can say, all right, Bailey Falter could go to the bullpen.
So, right.
I'll
so
say
it's
maybe.
Nola.
I'll say 60-40 now, 70.
Okay. I'll say 50-50 because it's Nola, Wheeler, Walker, Suarez. Like those 4 have rotation spots on lock. I've got no problem kicking Bailey Falter to the bullpen if Painter's ready to go.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's very possible. I think it's slightly more possible than Walker. Slightly more possible than Walker's.
Think about the narrative too. That's why I lean 50-50. The narrative with the Phillies is we got so close. Mm-hmm. Let's go get it.
Yeah.
And if they put their 19-year-old starting pitcher in the rotation on opening day, that's Dave Dombrowski. Like, here's the saying, putting his dick on the table.
Yeah. And well, it's funny is like the Marlins did it late in the season with a 19-year-old Miguel Cabrera. And I almost think it's similar in a way like that, where it's like, we're all in right now. Like, let's go win it. And let's try to win this thing, with all hands on deck. Alvarez already debuted last year, but I actually think he might not even break camp regardless. Obviously Volpe, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. There's no reason when you've got Oswald Peraza there. Right. We'll fly through a few more. Taj Bradley, no.
Maybe.
Their rotation's so good.
Yeah, like it's too crowded, but
and I want him to work on the change a little bit. Like, again, another guy, just like throw some more starts in AAA. He took a minor step back in triple. Like, just throw some more innings up there.
Yeah.
Kyle Harrison.
No,
I agree. I think I don't know why the Giants are like I get why they're bullish on him. I don't get why they're bullish on his timeline. He still has some command things he needs to work through.
Yeah.
Flying through here, Hoppy already debuted. Bobby Miller.
No.
I say no, but it's kind of a close to maybe where he could just he's another guy. If he shoves in spring training, possible, but the Dodgers, they don't need him as bad. I think once one of the 5 guys in their rotation inevitably get hurt, I don't root for that, but like,
yeah,
come
I
on.
think they're gonna.
You got Kershaw, you got
need him on
Gons,
May 1st.
you got Kershaw, you got Gonsolin, you've got Noah Syndergaard. Like, someone's going down, man. Like, that's when we'll see him up. Stone, same boat. Is there anyone else that we're missing? Brandon Pfaadt, what do you think? I say maybe, but it's probably not going to happen.
But say it should. No. It should, but I say no, because even if you move Bumgarner to the bullpen, then you're looking at an opening day 5 of Gallen, Kelly, Jameson, Ryan Nelson, and who am I missing? I'm missing somebody. I know.
Yeah, who are you missing?
I'm missing
Zach Davies.
Yeah. So yeah, like, I don't think that they need to start Pfaadt's clock. And again, we're talking about a service time thing, but like, Jameson's clock has already started. Ryan Nelson's has already started. Tommy Henry's has already started. Yeah. So you've got these guys that you can have up there. Pfaadt, like, stick him in triple. When he passes with flying colors, get him up 2 months into the year.
Last one for you. And I know the answer. Matt Mervis.
No comment.
It should be a yes. It should be a yes. It should at least be a maybe. Is it a no at this point?
I think it's a no.
And it's a no for one reason and one reason only. I think service time manipulation. Except this is an unjustifiable one. We've talked about it. Nothing else he really needs to show. I think the fact that he's playing in the World Baseball Classic, like that the Cubs gave him the green light on that, probably tells you a little bit about whether they, really think he has a chance to make it out of camp or not. I don't think he's going to have a chance, but given that they signed Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer, I think they'll realize magically within a month, as I've mentioned, that Eric Hosmer is not their left-handed hitting first baseman that they want. And all of a sudden, good thing we have Matt Mervis, who has a 1,000 OPS through the first month of AAA. Who would have thought? And they bring him up. So I don't think he breaks camp. One more interesting one, honestly. Sorry. How about Robert Gasser?
Bruce? No. Close, but no.
I think close, but no. Though Aaron Ashby, shoulder. What if one more injury goes down, like one more guy goes down during spring training or whatever? Again, never want that to happen. But is he not a maybe?
I don't think on opening day. I think when he succeeds in Nashville, he's ready, because as of right now, I mean, Ashby might be like the 7. So he's
Burns, out though for a month or two.
Right. So it's Burns, Woodruff, Lawlar, Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley. That's the 5. They just signed Wade Miley to a deal. In the bullpen, the
Miley signing does change.
Yeah. In the bullpen with major league starting reps, Adrian Hauser and Bryce Wilson.
Yeah.
No, so I don't think they pull the trigger on Gasser right away.
Another one, don't need to rush him. Like, command could get a little bit better. Let's see him have a little bit more success out there. Yeah. But I thought that was an interesting one to throw in there too. Ruiz, expect him to be up there. He's already debuted though. Same with Spencer Steer. Westberg?
No.
Orioles?
Yeah. No, I mean, shit, like, we're going to put Gunnar Henderson at 3rd and there's no room for Jorge Mateo.
Yeah, Jorge Mateo might be on the bench. Like,
right.
It's crazy. I don't know why they didn't trade Jordan Westberg. Maybe they will. Maybe they will for some pitching at some point. But that'll do it for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for the awesome questions. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe on our YouTube. Please leave a rating on the podcast, Spotify, Apple. If you want to leave a review on Apple, that's always cool too. Again, really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. The numbers for the call up have been, really honestly humbling. Like, it's been really cool to see this thing continue to grow. I think it's the people loving the involvement of Jack McMullen. And I think just being a little bit more consistent with the schedule here, but thank you so much for everybody that, may have recently discovered us and has been hanging on and hanging out with us. And you can expect a lot more during the season to keep you briefed on what's going on, interviews with players and much more. random but fun interview coming up is Nas Nunez of the Marlins. I
Oh,
think a very
sweet.
underrated prospect in that system. He's going to be, I think that's going to be Monday's episode. So we're going back to back Marlins here. Figured it might as well time together. And I think that might be the next system we do after the Yankees. Nas Nunez is a guy that I think he's going to find his way to the big leagues with his glove and his speed. Really excited to just talk ball with him because he's a real throwback style player. I think Marlins fans will be reminded of Luis Castillo and kind of fall in love with that if he can hit enough. So look out for that interview on Monday. Jack, any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I love these mailbags. They're fun.
Yeah.
And like it's a very concrete way of talking to the people that I know are listening consistently, which is great.
No, we'll try to do these at least every 2 weeks, maybe in the season every week. I think with the minor leagues, with how much is going on, we'll have
When there's more
short
stuff happening, that's better.
Yep. And we're right on the cusp of stuff happening. So we'll be able to talk to you about that as it gets closer and do a lot more of these mailbags. Again, thank you so much for listening. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk prospects with you on Monday.